Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. It's great to have you here. And today we're going to be having our panel. Well, today we've got a gentleman and a lady who's going to be helping us analyze some of the things that we're going to talk about. So let's bring in our guest today. Good morning, good evening, Gary.
Yes, it is evening here, 7 o'clock, 7 o'clock Saturday, Friday night.
It's great to have you here. And
Thanks.
let's bring JJ on. How are you today, JJ?
I'm doing good.
That is good. It's nice to have you guys here, and we look forward to having a bit of a chat. And if anybody in the live stream wants to be able to ask a question, by all means, put them up, and we'll be able to use our friendly little panel to be able to answer some of the questions. So that'll be good. So, tell me, Gary, we get out of the J-dubs and that's about it.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed what you last thing you said. We get out of the J-dubs and what?
And that's about it. We don't have to do anything else.
Right, that's where it starts.
That's where it starts, yeah.
Yeah, because oftentimes, and I don't think it's, to criticize anyone in particular. I think it's all of us probably. We're out in the sense that we don't go to the Kingdom Hall anymore, and we question the beliefs, and maybe we do some research, but we still are kind of JWs in a way. Like a lot of our thought patterns, we're kind of stuck because of the lack of self-esteem that comes from the way we were taught, and maybe we still have anger and resentment over certain things. So it's just the beginning, really. We haven't started to grow yet.
What do you think, JJ? Oops, she's run away.
I guess so. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I've noticed that too. People, they seem to say, yep, I'm out of the J-dubs. Oh, there you are, JJ.
Sorry.
That's all right.
And what was your question?
Okay, so we get out of the J-dubs, and we say, yep, we're out of the J-dubs. Is that all there is to it?
Oh, from my experience, absolutely not. I think there's a whole lot to the process of leaving a high control group like that, and I think it just takes a long time to change our thinking and get that completely out of our head like we need to.
Yeah. What do you think some of the steps are that we can take to progress slowly, bit by bit, away from the J-dubs?
Well, I think speaking from like what I went through, for a lot of years I was out, but I really didn't recognize it as it being a high control group. I always thought that I was the one that didn't get that, and that everyone that I felt like the witnesses were still correct, or had the truth. And so for a lot of years, I never really even took the time to look at other information or to do any kind of research for myself, because I still lived by that rule in my head that you couldn't go outside and look at other information because it was considered apostate. And so even though I wasn't in, I still, my head was still in. There was still a lot of rules in my head that I lived by as far as the witnesses and what I was raised with.
So how long has it been for you, JJ?
I've been out 18 years.
What was that, sorry?
I've been out 18 years.
Oh, cool. Do you remember what the first thing you did was to start working on things?
Well, to be honest, I think the first thing I did that made me kind of scared to do, but I did anyway, was someone that I worked for asked me to go to college. And so I started college. And that was kind of my start of the breaking away at that time,
Yep.
which turned out to be positive in the long run. And it helped me to just figure out other things besides witnesses.
Have you guys got headsets?
I've got one. I could try it.
We're just getting a lot of background noise.
Really? Okay. Let's see. I'm not even sure where to plug this in.
How's that?
Yeah, that's much better. Yep.
Okay, good. I could hear you too.
Yeah, that's better.
Ah, that's great. We can hear. Excellent.
Do you have a headset, JJ?
No, I don't. But it's okay now because the feedback. It must have been coming from your end.
Oh, okay. All right.
No, that's cool. We can hear each other. So just so that I can hear it clearly, JJ, you did the first thing, something about education?
I did. That was one of the first things I think I did as I was leaving, was I enrolled in college and started kind of heading down the path of getting an education, which I at the time, and I was talking to Gary not too long ago about when I started college. I actually thought I was doing like something horribly wrong because of my upbringing with the witnesses. It felt really uncomfortable, and I was kind of scared about everything that had to do with college and being around people that were non-witnesses, and all that whole experience was actually kind of really scary for me to start with. But once I was in and kind of got started in college, like, it didn't take long for me to realize and just start. I kind of was like a sponge for a lot of years, because really all I'd been fed for so long was just JW material, and it just was nice to just like learn a whole lot of other things. There was just a whole nother world out there.
What about you, Gary?
Well, some really similar things, but some different things. I guess my impression is that JJ was raised as a witness, right?
Yes, I was born in and several generations in both sides of my family.
Yeah, because I never had that fear of the world, like the world is. I mean, I agreed that, people in the world are generally immoral. And if you're going to get stabbed by someone, it's probably going to be somebody in the world rather than a JW, right? but I didn't have a fear like I'm not supposed to be friends with these people, because I wasn't raised in. I think there's a fundamental difference, depending upon how young you were when you came in. But the things that are similar, between me and what JJ just said, is that I also, for quite a while, still believed that it was the truth. In my case, it was a phased thing, because what happened first was I was arrested because of my ex-wife, something that she did, and the word went around so quickly, and I was ostracized even way before I was ever in front of a judicial committee. I mean, like 4 years before anything actually ever happened, which was not even connected with the false arrest. And so I was adjusting to this concept of the Brotherhood being a big sham, but I still thought it was the truth. I just thought, well, that's an imperfection. What are you going to do? It's still the truth. This is still God's organization. For me, it wasn't until about 3.5 years ago, I guess now, that I actually decided I was already disfellowshipped for a while, for a couple of years. And I finally felt that I had time to research some things. Before that, I was too busy just working on getting my life back together, financially, socially. Just, I didn't have time to think about, is this the truth or not? It didn't matter to me, because I just thought it was, So I did a study, and I was actually shocked. I was actually trying to prove it was the truth, because I was so chagrined by so many things. I was like, this is getting worse all the time. So I was trying to prove that, but actually it is. Don't worry about it, Gary. It is the truth, And I just found out, like, wow, holy mackerel. For the first time, I looked at it objectively. And so that's where you start, I think, to get back to your original question, is like, okay, so now, all right, I've been sort of kind of out. The Brotherhood has rejected me, okay. But now that I'm really out, like this fellowship, and now that 2 years after that, I've done this research and realized that, wow, I really don't want to ever be in that kingdom hole again. That's when you sort of start developing, I guess. It's like you're born, you know. So that's when I really started kind of, thinking like, what can I work on? Not just the temporal things like getting a job and getting my own apartment and things like that I had to do. That's when I started really thinking about, who am I? And is it even important to believe, to have religious slash spiritual beliefs? And if so, what are they? And what importance do they have? And do you have to necessarily prove it? And there's a lot of things I think we go through, because it's sort of like a grief process when you finally realize that you believe for the last 40 years that we're going to live in paradise, survive Armageddon, live in paradise forever in perfect health, and all of a sudden that goes away. For a lot of people, that's like grief. It's like somebody died.
Yeah,
wasn't for me, because I had already adjusted to that even while I was still in. I still believed it, but I didn't believe I was going to be there because of the mental cruelty that the elders put on me. But so I think we're just starting at that point.
Yeah. So JJ, when you went to go to the uni and do your education, what were some of the steps that you found helpful for yourself?
I think learning that there's a whole lot of ideas that are not. There's so many things that there's so many things that Jehovah's Witnesses teach, and you have to live by those, and it's real black and white. And what I found from going to college is that there's a whole lot of color in the world, not just black and white. And it helped me to understand different views and different people. And you do so many discussions in class and listen to your peers, and just listening to them, and I realized that they were human and people just like me. And it was kind of a learning to just accept people in a different way, accept ideas that I normally would not have accepted, because I was taught not to listen to anything except Jehovah's Witnesses and literature. And so it was just kind of expanding my horizons and realizing that there's way more out there in the world than and that it wasn't all bad.
Yeah.
So it's not all bad like what I was taught. And so, those, but I think that progressed over the years. Although, I think the real awakening for me wasn't until in just the last 2 to 3 years, when I finally started to actually kind of realize that, some of the materials out there that are available to us to do research on. And when I started to actually go there, I thought, why haven't I ever done this before? Because I've I think everything that I do, I've researched, but I didn't research Jehovah's Witnesses for some reason. And when I started to, it helped me. There was kind of a, hit in the face kind of thing. And then I had to accept the fact that I gave like 34 years of my life to being a pioneer and an elder's daughter and an elder's wife, and raising my kids that way, and then realizing that had to accept the fact that I made the choice to stay in there, and I felt kind of like duped in some ways. But although and I think there was a period of time where I got angry about it, and I felt like there was I felt angry, but then I realized that from their frame of reference that that everybody that is my family that's still a witness, they're only doing what they're taught, just exactly like what I was taught. And so, when they do the things they do, I don't fault them or blame them. I just realize that it's because they're controlled by witnesses and all of the teachings, and that's what they're taught. So, how can I really expect anything different? And I think there's an acceptance piece with that in order to have some peace in the whole process of that.
That's very true. Would you agree with that, Gary?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I always think about how the opposite of empowered would be. What's the opposite of empowered? How de-emphasized we are as Jehovah's Witnesses, or I guess in any kind of cult. You could, because these different ideas of like not thinking too much of yourself. Well, that's fine. You should be humble, and don't be so proud of yourself at the expense of others. Well, that's a good, but they would get it all mixed up with if you assert any kind of pride or any kind of individual thinking or individualized effort towards like getting an education or anything like that. It's like, oh, that's independent thinking, and this is all bad. The net result is that you're just so de-emphasized that the kind of things JJ was talking about are natural, you know. And it seems to me, I mean, this is a theory of mine, I suppose, but because I'm a man, but it seems to me that women must have a more of a challenge in that area because they're the weaker vessel, which doesn't just mean that they're usually a little bit shorter and have less muscle tone. It means actually that they're mentally weak, really, because they're so emotional that they can't possibly be trusted to make decisions. So that's why they're not elders and things like that. So women are so de-emphasized that I think this empowerment thing is like totally new to them. It's new to everybody. It was new to me too. The idea of self-empowerment being okay. Yeah. But I think for women, it's like really like you are not supposed to do it. You are supposed to be in subjection, and you were taught your whole life that women are just women. That's all they are. You know, you just do the dishes, and you know you can give talks on the school and stuff, but there's got to be somebody up there with you. And but I think that's one of the key things that we start to learn when we're out is self-empowerment, because we want to do things. We want to get an education. We want to get a decent job, and you know, save for our retirement and things like that. And that's it's not just because of JW. It's also society in general makes those things more difficult for a woman. I think it's improved a lot, but it's still pretty messed up.
Is that what you found, JJ?
Yeah. So one of my sole reasons for deciding to go to college was because I had left my husband, who was an elder, and I'd been married for 17 years, and I was a single mom. And so in the process of that, I realized the importance of needing to be able to provide for myself and my children and not ever having to end up in a situation like what I had been in before. And I didn't want to ever have to rely on anybody to the point of feeling like I was stuck in a situation. And so my reason for going to college was to make sure that that never happened to me and my children ever again. And so maybe that kind of spurred me on in the college direction. But, you know, I had a lot of resistance from my family. My family, you know, my mom says, why don't you just find a man that'll support you and then you can pioneer and come back to being a witness. And my sister would say, why are you wasting your time going to college? It's stupid. You're wasting your time. And it was, there's a lot of negative comments from my family about it early on.
Yeah. Well, you're both on this side of it now.
Yeah.
So looking back, has the effort been worth it?
Oh, absolutely.
What's been one of the best things for you, JJ?
Just feeling like, you know, I feel like I can support myself, and you know, I've always felt that helped me be independent and think for myself, and that kind of changed my life.
Great. And Gary?
That's kind of a loaded question, but if I had to pick one thing, I would probably say that I always tried to be a good person, whatever that means. And of course, I made mistakes all the time, you know, sometimes serious mistakes, but you just some dumb thing every day, you know. But I really tried to be just a good person, to imitate Jesus and everything. And I think for the most part, I think I did fairly well, you know. I mean, like I said, chock full of mistakes, but when you're out and you're not going out in service anymore and conducting Bible studies and giving talks on the school and public talks and shepherding people, when I did that years ago, and I used to like to go visit people in the hospital and nursing homes, or if they're convalescing at home, and that's not, people out here in the real world don't appreciate that quite as much as I've always found people in the congregation did. So I kind of felt like a fish out of water. Like, how can I be a good person? Well, then, you know, I think you have to really look at what does it mean to be a good person. I mean, if you just do something good every day, I don't mean one thing, but if you're just a good person all day, it's not, you're not going to measure yourself by a field service report, because you can't. You're not filling out field service reports anymore. So I think that was kind of a revelation to me, is that I think I'm still the same person I always was. I really do. And I think I'm a good person. I mean, yeah, I do some stupid things, made some serious mistakes once in a while, but I think that's a challenge. Is like, what does it mean to be a moral, decent, contribution to society? Because it was defined for us before. This is what it is. It's turning in a field service report. It's conducting Bible studies. It's giving talks on the school. It's being an appointed man if you're a man. And that's a measuring stick that was created for us. It's like, here's the measuring stick. Let's see how you measure up. Now you have to kind of think for yourself, like, what does it mean for me to be good? Is there a charity I could support? Is there some volunteer work I can do, or just being a good person, being kind to people that you meet every day? So, and I don't think that's a challenge to do. It was just a challenge to realize that, yeah, I'm not a bad person just because I didn't turn in a field service report last month,
So how long's it been for you, Gary?
Well, I got this fellowship in 2016, so that's a little over like 5.5 years ago. Like I said, my actual research that proved to me that, oh my goodness, this is not the truth after all, that was only like 3.5 years ago. But the whole thing started almost 10 years ago when my wife basically kicked me out and decided she wanted a man that's more what she thinks is spiritual. But if you go back farther than that, I don't know, 5 or 10 years that I was still going to all the meetings, but I really hated going to the Kingdom Hall. I just was really uncomfortable because I was sort of on the outside looking in, because I wasn't part of anything anymore, it felt like. So I was really listening to things coming across from the platform, and I was like, this is crazy. I don't mean doctrines. I didn't question the doctrines. I mean, the definition of a generation, yeah, I thought that was stupid. But, the basic doctrines that we're living in the last days, Armageddon's coming, the soul is the soul, and, this kind of stuff. I totally agree with all that stuff. But just this crazy things I'd hear about the worshipful attitude we're supposed to take toward the appointed men in the organization, from the elders to the governing body, that stuff really bothered me for years, like for 5 or 10 years. So I don't know, depending upon how you, it's anywhere from 2 to 15 years, I guess, but officially 2 that I've been out.
Yep.
Or 3. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. 5. What's the matter with me? 5 that I've been out, but really about two, I guess, or 3 since I did the studying and realized what's wrong with the whole thing.
So, what made you do study and research? What was your mindset at the time?
It just, well, like I said, I really still believed and lived every day as if it's the truth, except for the fact that I'm not going to go to meetings again. I just figured that whether I'm going to survive Armageddon or not doesn't matter. I just know that that when I die, I'm just going to be dead. So what's the difference? I still believed everything. And I think it was sort of I read Crisis of Conscience and, the Ray Franz book. And I would say that was because of a personal crisis of mine that was the opposite of what Ray Franz was writing about. I was concerned about that this has to be the truth. I know I'm not going to the Kingdom Hall again, but it has to be the truth. And I wanted to kind of reprove it to myself, And so I finally got the thing out because I just thought, not that that's going to help me prove that but I wanted to prove that Franz was an evil apostate, like everybody always told me he was, And I said, yeah, it's about time I read it. I'm just curious, like, what does he even have to say? I have no idea what's even in the book. And boy, I found out that, he was actually very honest and humble the way he depicted everything. So I think that was it. I had this crisis of faith where I really needed to prove that this is the truth. And honestly, I looked at it and I said, wow, this is wrong, but it's still the truth. This is wrong, but it's still the truth. They still got 60% right. That's better than the Catholic Church or whoever, And it was, it gets to be like the preponderance of evidence that it's not the truth just makes you realize that this is not the truth. And I think what really did it for me was when I realized that this latest thing. Well, it's not latest anymore. It's about 10 years old now. That the governing body and the faithful and discreet slave are the same thing. And I'm thinking, okay, so the faithful and discreet slave was supposedly appointed by Jesus in, 1919 or something like that. And the governing body didn't come into existence until 1971. So, and then when I looked at the whole 1914, all the chronology being off by at least 20 years, it throws everything into the garbage. You know, it's like their claims of being appointed by Jesus kind of fall flat. So I think that's when I realized that, you know, there's a whole world out there of knowledge. A lot of it's not good. A lot of it's false, and a lot of it is stuff that is it's probably healthy for us to at least investigate and prove to yourself. And that's what I needed to do all over again. I needed to prove something to myself.
Fair enough too.
Yeah.
So we're all out. We've done the research. We've found out what we've found out. We're where we are now. What were some of the other things? I noticed, Gary, if I can just start with you. You put up a post this morning in the Life After group where it took you so long to put this song together. I did listen to it. I thought it was quite good. I just can't remember the name of it. But
Western Lady.
Yeah, Western Lady.
Yeah.
But you said up until September last year, you couldn't get things right in your head, or whatever the word you used.
Yeah.
How did that process work? Was that involved in everything that had been going on in your life?
Oh, it had nothing to do with the ex Jehovah's Witness experience. It was just a set of circumstances that are just they're just very chaotic. And and the last thing that when I took a trip out west, you know, way out west to the California, and that ended up being a real disaster. It just shook me from down to my boots, you know. And I didn't know what the heck I was going to do next. I had basically given up my business and sold like almost half of my possessions for almost nothing so I could make a move, and it ended up being a really, really bad idea. And then I come back to the East Coast, and my ex-wife, I found out, was in hospice, or was going to be in hospice. She had cancer. And I said, well, I just know her circumstances, and she definitely needs help, and she's not going to get it from anybody. I just know that about her. She's never going to get help from anybody. So I just decided to do that. So for several months I was there, and it, you know, again, my business fell through the cracks because I was so busy just administering medication every 2 hours and changing diapers and stuff, and I just a lot of very chaotic things happened. It had nothing to do with being an XJW, I don't think, but I basically made a move to where I live now because I met someone, and it's like the first time that my focus has really started to make sense. You know, I mean, not life is not without problems, you know, but you know, I find that I can't do creative things. Like I know songwriters that their worst days are produce the best songs, you know, because their songs are all about, you know, suffering or whatever. But I'm the opposite. If I'm not feeling right about things, I can't even do music hardly. So that particular song, I mean, yeah, I wrote it a couple of years ago, and it just sat and sat and sat, and then I mean, I didn't have a place to actually do the recording because my life was so up in the air. But now where I'm living, I you know, it's not like I have a studio, but everything's going beautifully, and I got my mind is more focused and everything, and so I just kind of finished it. And
Cool.
Yeah.
So your journey's been quite up and down, hasn't it? Is that abnormal? From
I don't know.
Noticed?
I don't know. JG could probably answer that better, but I don't know.
Okay.
I guess it probably happens a lot from what I see from the different comments and things in the various groups and people I talk to. People have a lot of bad days, and that's life in general. But people have lots of bad days and lots of good days, and then the good day turns into a bad day. You know, so because I think we're all still adjusting. It's not like you just read a book and say, oh, this is what I have to do, and then you do it, and then you're happy from now on. You still have these thoughts that come in because of the way our unconscious mind works with the conscious mind, and you know, how we process new information. Like I think it's really important to study whatever you can about whatever it is that bothers you. You know, study if you want to have beliefs, maybe you have to study the Bible with somebody else, or if you want to. You're tending toward atheism. Okay, so study anthropology. I don't know, whatever it is. You got to fill your head with knowledge, and that new knowledge always conflicts with the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind says, "Okay, who is this intruder that's kind of trying to enter this brain? Let's put him to the test." You know, and that happens with emotions as well that are based on old ideas, like the self-esteem issues that we have as witnesses, and things like that. So once in a while, something will come up that you have to really think about. Why do I feel this way? Is it because of, well, it could be anything. It could be our JW pastor. It could be our the way our parents raised us or whatever, you know. But I think it's a work in progress where you have to always compare new information with the old, and make a intelligent decision on which one's correct, and therefore why is this affecting me emotionally? Because you know, this is getting to be a cliche now, but emotions are always preceded by thoughts. There's never ever an emotion that doesn't have a thought that comes before it. So if the thought was wrong, like if you're saying I'm a worthless piece of garbage, okay, why? Why do you? And I think that way about myself sometimes. I think like I'm done, you know. But why? You know, what is the thought that, like, what's the basis for you thinking that you're worthless? Why should you have low self-esteem? And if you can tame that thought, then you can kind of get out of that mood. So I think it happens to everybody, most of us anyway.
What do you think, JJ?
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of ups and downs for a lot of reasons. First of all, like, there's, all of a sudden you realize that everything you believed in isn't true, and then it makes you question, who am I and what do I believe in, and was this all a waste, or like what is in my future if that isn't, like, if that's not my back pocket anymore, like what is? And I think that it's kind of an emotional roller coaster, and I think sometimes we see people go into blame of the organization or blame of their families, which kind of leads to a victim stance position, which, I'm pretty familiar with that myself and have done that in the past. Although what I realize is, when I realize my part and just acceptance of, where I'm at, rather than looking at somebody else, I realize that I really resent myself for being duped or staying there as long as I did and not researching like I could have, and realizing that it's really me that I'm mad at, really not everybody else. And I think one of the biggest parts of my journey was not having the spiritual part of that, and not knowing what that really meant or where to find what I needed. And I just really felt lost, kind of like a nomad with no place to land for a long, long time. And I think that just kind of realizing that, you don't have to find that in a building or a congregation, and it doesn't have to be fanatic. It can just be, my love of nature, and like the love of my children and grandchildren, and it could be like all those things that you have in that connections with other people. You look around you, there's a ton of things that bring about a spiritual experience to me, or a connection with other people, and that has become my spiritual sense. And so it doesn't have to be found where it did before, but that doesn't change really who I am. It just has evolved into something a little bit different. So, and it's not really to be judged good or bad. It just is something that helps me along the way. And, I think the person who I am is still there, the same person that I was when I was raised as a witness. And it wasn't all bad and it wasn't all good. There was some really bad things that happened to me when I was growing up as a witness in my family. Although they taught me good morals, they taught me to live a good life, they taught me to be a good person, which are all the things I needed to be able to succeed in life. So they taught me a lot of good things, and I can't deny the fact that those are there, even though there was a lot of bad.
Yep. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one.
And what I do for a living, I listen to people's problems all day long. That's what I do. And to be honest with you, everybody else's problems really make mine seem pretty small when I look at what other people have gone through. And yes, I went through a lot of stuff, but it's nothing like compared to what a lot of people go through.
What would you suggest, JJ, if somebody who's going to watch this live stream is having those problems with all the ups and downs? Would there be one step that you could encourage a person to do from your own personal experience?
When we get stuck in like looking at the organization, like once I figured out that what it was, I was just done. I just was done. Didn't need to research anymore. I was just, my focus is not there. I think focusing on something else, getting our minds some different direction on a positive note, volunteering in the community, making friends in the community, getting a job, doing things that you like, maybe learning to play the guitar or play music, or find different things to do, that activities that you've had an interest in and never followed through with.
What's been the most fun you've had doing that?
Well, I'm a big fan of music, and so I kind of frequent music and things that have to do with music. But I mean, I bought four-wheelers and I go four-wheeling in the mountains, and I go camping with my kids, and I ride bikes, and I do all kinds of stuff now that with other people, that I really, really enjoy. So, but I probably would never have done those things as a witness.
No, you would have been stuck in the kitchen, I guess, or something.
With my apron on, yeah, and going to the meetings, yeah.
Yeah.
And being a good little pioneer.
What about you, Gary? What are some of the fun things that you've enjoyed since you've worked through a lot of the stuff to where you are now?
Well, I mean, I've always done music, and I did that even when I was in. But and I wouldn't say less, but I don't know. I'm a little freer to do it now. But a lot of the activities that JJ also mentioned, I do. But what really, really resonated with me is when she said that. I mean, it was different for me. Like as soon as she realized it wasn't the truth, it was like, what's the point anyway? Why do I even want to dwell on this? With me, it was a little different in that I was trying to prove it was the truth. But as soon as I realized it was not, I don't recall ever having any feelings of resentment or hatred, like, oh my God, they lied to me, and people have that. I get it. I'm not trying to minimize that or demean them or anything like that. But I didn't go through that. I guess it was partly because I went through a progression of first realizing that the Brotherhood was a sham, and then going through whatever I went through, and then et cetera, et cetera. So I adapted to this, and then I adapted to that. But I think it's really, really important to, at some point, I don't know if it's today for everybody, maybe they just left yesterday, I don't know, but at some point it's critical, absolutely critical to your happiness and your productive existence to not blame everything on the Watchtower. There's any number of things that have contributed to who we are. Our parents, our school that we went to. I mean, there's all kinds of genetics, what part of the world we grew up in. Yeah, the JW organization is a big part of it, but it's just a part of it. There are people that grew up Muslim or just grew up in a house of prostitution. There are kids that were sold into sex slavery. I mean, how do you explain their lives? So to go through, and JJ mentioned the victim stance. That's kind of what we're making ourselves as a victim.
Yep.
And you'll always be a victim as long as you see yourself as a victim. So I think it's really, really critical to move past that space where you're just always saying that damn religion, I mean, and there are things that like I've got 3 grown kids and at least 1 grandchild, I don't know, maybe more, that shun me. And that's pretty much the only thing I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis that really bothers me. And it hurts. And I know everybody out there has got somebody, a parent or old friends or something like that. So I'm not saying that it's not ever going to come up in your life, that something bothers you, because that is the organization's teaching. It is their fault that that's happening. But, I don't know. I just look at the way I was when I was a witness. I supported the whole arrangement. I wouldn't have, done it with my kids or something like that. But, so I forgave myself, and I reunited with some people that were disfellowshipped when I was in, that I treated as disfellowshipped, like I was good boy supposed to. And I apologized, and they said, "Oh, Gary, come on, stop it. You did what you were supposed to do. I did the same thing." Every one of us can say that. We can all say we did the same thing. So if you're going to beat up the organization, you have to beat up yourself. So just stop. just sort of. And I'm not saying let it go like it's an easy thing to do, but at some point we need to get out of that victim stance and not blame every single thing on the organization. I mean, it's to recognize, where feelings come from, because I was taught to think that I'm just a good for nothing slave and things like that. Okay, great, that's fine. So hopefully you beat that thought down. But to constantly dwell on the organization and what are they doing today, and are they finally getting their comeuppance? And I don't see how that's really healthy.
I agree. So when you think about some of the things you've been through, Gary, what would be one practical thing you'd encourage?
For somebody that's out?
Yeah, or trying to wake up, or, questioning somebody who's out and they are struggling with, say, the victim mentality, blaming it all on Watchtower, whoever. Is there something practical that you could suggest that could be helpful?
I think practicing gratitude. And the reason I say practice gratitude is because it might not be the easiest thing in the world. And some days you might really have to think like, okay, I'm grateful that I woke up and then I'm breathing. Okay, that's great, but you're not going to wake up every day and say there's other things maybe we can be grateful for something that we learned, and maybe it's from the organization. I don't know. There are things that I learned in the organization that I am still grateful for. I mean, I'll give you just one great big example is that I grew up in a pretty racially prejudiced environment, all white neighborhood, and the black neighborhood was over here, and you didn't mix, and then when I came into the organization, the congregation was more than half black, and just the warmest people I've ever met. They're just wonderful, wonderful people, and it was like I mean maybe I would have come out that way anyway. I don't really know, because I did used to kind of look at the civil rights movement and kind of analyze things and this and that, but the fact is, I learned it from the organization. Now, maybe I would have learned it otherwise. I don't know, but I did learn it from them. So I'm still grateful for that, because I just love people of all races. I really do, and I think it's wonderful that the world is so diverse. I can't stand it, thinking like where I live now is pretty much mostly white, and that's probably the only thing about where I live that I'm not crazy about. Like they always say, if you see black people, it's probably because they're on the army base or the navy base or something like that. And it's like, geez, really? So I wish I could kind of go back to where it was more mixed, and so I'm grateful for that. And anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. I just think it's good to practice gratitude, just to be grateful for something every day. Think of 1, 2, 3, 5, whatever things that you can be grateful for. And if you find yourself being grateful from something that you learned from your dad, who was an elder, who's the one that made you do all this stuff and said you can't go to college, and now he's shunning you, don't put up a wall. Be grateful for it. Be grateful for whatever it is you want to be grateful for. I don't see how you can be grateful and forgiving and all these other good things and be a victim. They're two opposite things.
Yep.
And you're always going to find something that, this happened to me and I had no power over it. Like maybe I was a kid and something happened to me and there's nothing I could do about it. And that's a fact of life. It's just the way it is, So you're probably not seeing that wrong, but to be constantly, like, for the rest of your life, letting that define who you are and making you feel, less than you really are, it's just not helpful, because we're putting ourselves in a victim stance. And again, the opposite of that is being grateful for things.
Very true. Well, guys, I want to say thank you for being part of our little panel today. Both of you got anything else to add that you'd like to share with this aspect?
No, I think I'm good. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us, JJ. It's been nice to have you on. Thank you, Gary.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Just the one thing I would add is I've just been doing a lot of research, and this is the latest thing that I'm on, is that, we don't worry about what you believe. You can be an atheist. You can go back to the Baptist church. It's whatever you want. That's fine. But I would just say to be really analytical and really challenging, really challenge the things that you learn. Not like we did so much in the Watchtower. We got to the point where if it's the truth, then everything they say is true. Yep. Because I've seen it. I don't want to say what exactly, but I've seen people get into different modes of belief and things like that. That's not really helpful. Like, it's teaching them to shut off their emotions because this is a bad emotion, this is negative, or that, and this is just different teachings that don't really hold up to science and basically human nature. So I would just say be careful about. Just don't think, I'm on a learning spree and I'm going to look at YouTube videos and And wow, this is new. This is different from the Watchtower, so it must be true. There's a lot of false information out there from the Watchtower and from not out from other than the
Yeah,
Watchtower.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I would just be really careful about what you let into your head.
Yeah, all very good practical steps. We want to say thank you for both of you telling us a little bit of what you went through, some of the things that you've found helpful, and thank you for doing that.
Thank
So
you.
next time, we've got another panel coming up in a couple of about 8 weeks' time, and we've got some interesting characters on that panel, so it should be quite interesting. Keep in mind that on tomorrow, New Zealand time is 8 o'clock. That'll be your time, Gary, somewhere around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That we've got a special Zoom event with regards to our thinking as well, and the traumas and things like that. So we'll be looking at that. And later in the week, Wednesday your time, Gary, it'll be Thursday my time, we're going to have Dan. We saw the picture come up in the group, the before and after, and we'll look forward to learning a little bit about his story. So everybody who's watching the live stream or going to watch it later, we want to say thank you very much. And we look forward to catching up with you again soon and be able to have an enjoyable time. So we want to say thank you for that. And yeah, we'll catch you next time. Bye.